Hi there, welcome to the archives. So I'm going to continue doing the warrior, queens, and intellectuals, 36 uh, great women before 1400. So again, this is like a disc set, actually. It comes with a book, a physical book, but then it actually is a six discs. So today we are on disc four. We're looking at the 19th great woman, and this is Duda. So it says Duda chronicles a Carolingian life. All now, to be honest with you, I don't know what Carolingian is. Like I still don't understand the Carolingian part. But what I do understand is she helped chronicle a lot of the ninth century, if I'm not mistaken. So we're gonna get into it. Duda, in June 29th, 824. Sorry, before I do that, I'm gonna try to work on my ums because I've been doing ums a lot. So bear with me. I'm trying to work on it as well as hand motions. I think it's more of a stimming thing, but bear with me. So June 29th, 824, there was a royal wedding in Germany, in Aachen, Aachen, Germany, um, at a chapel in Aachen that had been blessed by Charlemagne in 805. And this chapel is the first Holy Roman Emperor and the ruler of the largest territory in Europe since the Roman Empire fell, right? So the chapel was blessed by Charlemagne in 805. Charlemagne was the first Holy Roman Emperor, and he at the time ruled the largest territory of Europe since the Roman Empire fell earlier. So Charlemagne's son, Louis the Pious, was now emperor. Okay? Louis the Pious is the one that sponsored this wedding. The groom was Bernard of Septimania, which is a region in southern France. He is said to be the godson of Louis the Pious. So Bernard is Louis the Pious's godson. He is the groom that got married on June 29th. His bride was Duda. She was a writer. She was an intellectual. So today we're going to talk about an intellectual. We talked about the last one we did Kahina, which was a warrior. We also did Wu Zetian, which was a queen. Now we're going to get into an intellectual in Europe. So Duda, um, her writings showed that the personal was political at that time, right? The idea of personal is political comes out feminists, black feminists, second wave feminists, basically saying how you live your personal life often is a reflection of the political, and the political often impacts your personal life. All of it is political. So shortly after the wedding, um, oh, I just said shortly after the wedding, Bernard was appointed commander of the Spanish border. So Duda traveled with him in 826. She had a son, and they named their son William of Septimania. In 829, Bernard was called back to Aachen in Germany to serve for Louis the Pious. And he was basically serving one of the highest positions you could have as a chamberlain, which meant that he was able to control access to the king. He oversaw everything in the palace, including the king's finances. So Bernard had a lot of power. He was in a very political role. The thing is, it said that he didn't really know how to do politics. He was not a very good politician. Um, he left Duda behind. If you remember from the episode we did on Mary of Champagne, where she introduced romance, it was said that a lot of these noble women, their husbands would leave them for months, years at a time. So that's what happened here. Bernard went back to Aachen. He left Dhuoda behind in southern France, and she took care of the household while he was away. And Dr. Joyce goes into a little bit of a description of what her daily life would have looked like, what the palace would have looked like, the feasts they had, the food they ate. She said their diet was rich in a lot of meat and they drank a lot of ale. Wine was not yet introduced at this time, so they drank a lot of ale. Because her husband was away, Duda spent a lot of time with her homegirls, right? She and her sisters, her friends, they would sew, they weave, the spinning. They just spent a lot of time together. Um, they rode horses. She was into falconry, and she was also very highly educated. She was really, really, really smart. At the same time, she started to hear rumors about her husband. She started to hear rumors that her man was wilding out in Germany. He apparently was seeing other women. There's a lot of adultery in the mix-up. She just basically didn't care. She stayed devoted. She was really loyal to him. She focused her time on studying and praying. Um, she would read the Bible. So basically, she would hear that her Bernard was just out in these streets. He was really outside. Bernard was outside, and she was inside. She was at home tending to William, raising her son. Um, After 829, no one had anything good to say about Bernard, about her husband. Basically, all of the accounts were just like he was a waste man. I hate to say it, but that's pretty much in summary what Dr. Joyce was saying. Bernard was just a waste man, right? He was just trash. He was, and not just in terms of infidelity and how he treated her. He was a terrible politician. He was a backstabber. He was a traitor. He was not loyal. He got into a lot of trouble. He was accused of sleeping with the king's wife, because the king's first wife died, and the king Louis married a second woman named Judith. And it said that Bernard was sleeping with Judith, and it was even rumored that the son that Judith and Bernard had, the the son that Judith and the king had, it was rumored that it was actually Bernard's son. So he was just reckless. But regardless, we're not sure if the rumors were true or not, right? Um, and so this caused a lot of tension between King Louis's uh, sons with his first wife, and then Judith had a son, right? And so basically, it started a civil warfare. It started a civil warfare, which ended up all the way going through the 830s, right? So the king's oldest son, Lothair, he got once he was like gained a little bit more power and he had the upper hand, he had Bernard's brother blinded. I don't know exactly what that means, but he had one of Bernard's brothers blinded, because at that time, how you moved really affected your family, right? So the politics, again, politics has always been dirty, but basically because of the way Bernard was moving, the king's son sought retaliation, and so they killed they first of all they blinded one of his brothers, then they decapitated another one of his brothers, and then they removed his sister. Bernard's sister was a nun, and she lived in a convent. They took her from the convent. They sealed her in a wine barrel, and they drowned her in the river. And so Bernard's family was really affected. Duda was just minding her own business back home in southern France, right? But his Bernard's immediate family was really affected. And so um, he started to get the hit message, right? So in 839, Bernard withdrew. He went back to southern France to be with Duda. His son at that time was 13, right? William was 13, and in 840, Duda was pregnant again. It said that King Louis died in 840 in that same year. And so once he died, Bernard was like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to go back and reclaim myself, right? Let me try to get back my dignity. So Bernard went back to Aachen, Germany, but this time he took both of their sons. So he took William, which is the older son, and Bernard, which is a newborn son. So his son was just an infant. He wasn't even baptized yet. And Bernard took the two boys with him to Germany, leaving Dhuoda in southern France. And so he took a wet nurse, basically a nurse who was also breastfeeding her own child, so the nurse could breastfeed Bernard, which is Bernard Jr. And so, in their absence, obviously she's like heartbroken, right? Not only is she without her husband, she's without her both of her sons now, including her newborn, who she just gave birth to. And so she drowns herself back into her studies and into writing. And so it's at this time, it said that she worked on a manuscript for her son William, for her older son William, and basically the writings was just instructing him. The same things that she was teaching him back before he left is what she did, but in writing, right? So she was giving him advice, she was offering advice, she was giving him guidance. Be loyal to your father, be loyal to the Lord, because at that time they had to vow to a Lord. Just make sure that these men that are in positions of power, make sure that you're respecting them. Loyalty, loyalty, loyalty. And so she wrote to her son, and this writing basically documented and it gave us an account of what life was like during that time in the ninth century. And so she really was able to document what was going on in ninth century Europe. And the manuscript remained. It said that it didn't get published until 1677, and so all of that time it was kept intact, and it really made it gives us for those who have read it, it gives them a better understanding of what personal relationships look like during the feudal era, right? Because there's feudal ties at that time where the men were bound to their superiors. And so, yeah, basically, she was just an intellectual. In her writings, you could see how impressive she was. You could tell that she was educated. She spoke Greek, so there's Greek influence in there. You could see that she knows numerology. You could tell based on the ways that she was writing that she studied the etymology of words, like where the words came from, the dictionary, what their meanings were. Um, so yeah. She had poetry in there as well too. So her writing, it just basically showed that she was a really, really skilled writer and an intellectual. And so when King Louis died, he divided the land up to his sons, right? So when King Louis died, basically the oldest son got northern Italy and parts of southern France. The stepson, Judith's son, Charles the Bald, he got majority of France, and Louis' son Louis got Germany. So basically, each brother got a different part. One got Germany, one got France, another one got Italy. And so the Civil War basically ended at this time. And Bernard was captured and killed in 844. It said that Dhuoda died that same year, although we're not sure if she got word that her husband had died first. Um, and then her son, so the eldest son, William, basically started moving like Bernard, his father. He was really sketchy. He was not loyal. He left his lord. He was a traitor. And so because of that, their son William was killed in 850, and the second son, Bernard, who had never met his mother, he didn't know his mom. Oh, sorry. It said that when they killed their son William, he had his mother's book with him still. And so that book went to his younger brother, Bernard. Bernard was, it says that he was a pretty decent guy. He lived for another 30 years, but he never knew his mom really. And so basically, yeah, that was the life of Duda. She was an intellectual, and the writings, the book that she wrote to her son was later published, and it gives us a better understanding of what 6th century Europe, 7th century, ninth century Europe looked like at that time. And so, yeah, she died in 844. And I mean, her story was kind of boring, especially like coming from Kahina and all the other ones. I'm not trying to be shady, but she's just basically an intellectual who, a housewife, and she wrote a book for her son that basically let us know what life was like at that time for people in Europe in the ninth century. So, yeah, that is Judah. I still don't know what Carolinian is. Hopefully, maybe you do, you can figure that out. But yeah, so that's a brief history of who got what, right? Oh, and also it's important because that's when we started to see a divide in the languages, right? So the brother that got France, he started speaking French and more of like the love language. The brother that got Germany was speaking more of a Germanic language. Same thing with the brother that got Italy, was like more of like a Latin tongue. And so we start to see that each brother basically was speaking his own language based on the region of the world a part of Europe that he got. So that's pretty short. That's Duda. She's kind of boring like myself, so can't really. Intellectuals tend to be more boring, right? Because they're not out there on the battlefields fighting and stuff. So until next time, in solidarity.